I feel like a lot of Cowboys fans had their fire extinguishers in their hand ready, and then the fire just naturally went out on its own. Let's go live to MetLife Stadium in New Jersey, where the New York Giants and Jets play. Cowboys get the win, 20-15. And in our Discord, which you should go follow, John and I escaped by the hair of our chinny chin chin because we did have a listener who had 23-15. So Brandon Aubrey comes through for John and I to not
Wow.
be owing someone a grand total of, I think, $76. We'll start with you, John. What we got, man? Give me some thoughts.
Man, I'm trying not to be negative here. So I understand that people are excited to not. I shouldn't say people. I mean, I guess there's probably fans that are excited that they're at 2-2. You end the 2-game slide. There's just was too much of this game when I'm watching it that I kept saying to myself, and eventually kept saying to Saad and anybody else that was around me that I don't know that this team's playing any better than they have the last 2 weeks. They're just playing the Giants. So it's tough, man. I just don't have. This ain't really about the Cowboys for me as much as it's just like this run has been going on for a while where they just dominate the Giants, and so this was obviously not a dominating win, but I just never felt, no matter how close it got, or even after the Aubrey missed field goal, that they weren't going to win this game. And so it is good for them to get a win because that gets a bad taste out of your mouth. It allows you to have some positive mojo for kind of a mini bye week before they play, at Pittsburgh. But I did feel like it was a must win and they got it. So obviously you have to feel much better about that than what would we be talking about right now if they had found a way to lose that game? I mean, that would have been, I just got this sense there a little bit of a sigh of relief, from the team that we got that down, let's go. So those are just my thoughts on the game. And as the game was coming to a close, it certainly turned to, did Micah suffer something that's going to keep him out for months? How bad is this injury? Anytime you see a guy go into the medical tent and then onto a cart and leave, not a good sign. I would say that the percentages on that, 75%, it's not a good sign. I'd say there's 25% where you're like, okay, yeah, it ended up being that was just precautious. They didn't want him to be walking very far. I think this one leans on the 25%. I was only around Micah for a little bit after the game. Saad, you were around him much longer than I was. So by all means, jump in with your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think Micah seems to be fine. I had a quick chat with him before he kind of talked with the media at large, and he seemed pretty upbeat. I mean, he definitely seemed annoyed that there wasn't a holding call on the play where he got hurt. I think he said something to the tone of, I guess it's just different for me in the league, but at the same time, I asked him what his status was going to be for the game against Pittsburgh, and he said, he said the typical Micah lingo of I'm a killer, you got to kill me to keep me off the field and all that. But I just don't think he says that, and I don't think that he's hanging around the locker room, as John pointed out to me. I don't think Micah's just hanging around the locker room as much as he did and all that stuff. If it was something that was a lot more serious, So,
hey, before you go with your thoughts on the game, let's just add this in there real quick. So, as we're walking, a group of us are walking back after Dak was the last person to talk at the podium. And so it's a decent walk from that room, the locker room, all the way to the team buses. And so there's a group of us, Saad and I and some other reporters, and some of us are walking with Dak, the others are walking with McCarthy. And the catered food for the players was Katz's Deli. And so I don't know if you've never been to New York or you had it. It's very good. It's very well known. And Dak made sure to break away real quick to make sure he got some to take onto the bus, then on to the plane or whatever. And it's a pretty good walk until you finally get to where those buses and planes are, or bus to the plane. And when we got to the bus, which is probably a good 2-3 minute walk, Micah was on the cart there, putting on his shoes. It wasn't like he was in a boot or anything like that, and asked one of the members of the staff, do I got enough time to go? Because he wanted to go get the Katz's Deli too. And they were like, yeah, there's at least 5 or 6 more minutes. And so he went with they carted him over to that. Anyway, I'm just telling you to say this, that he did not give off any vibes of somebody that oh, I might be lost for a while or whatever. He was in very good spirits. Also, the fact that he never had a walking boot on when he was walking around the locker room, like he said a couple times, yeah, I'm in pain or whatever, but it's fine, whatever. But he never, no crutches or anything like that, to the point where I feel like if it was AT&T Stadium, I think he just walks through the bus. But there's just such a big. It's one of the. Wouldn't you say, Sad? It's like one of the biggest, longest walks
Yeah.
for road stadiums that we make. So I think that's the main reason he was even on that cart to the bus.
Yeah, no, but I think overall, just the amount of visibility, and I know it's Micah and he's very different when it comes to a lot of what he says and how he appears and stuff. I just don't think that, if it was anything serious, that he'd just be around as much as he was, let alone anything he said. X-rays were negative, so that's a good thing. He has an MRI scheduled. But I think the extra days are going to help, and I think, his entire vibe after the game seemed positive.
One thing that jumped out to me, and it's you know what? No, let me stay positive. The Cowboys won, so 2-2. Let's talk about CeeDee Lamb comes back, the rebound game. He continues to own the Giants. Let's go there first before we get into some nitpicky things. But I did think, even though you would not have that explosive offense, you did have explosive play on offense that kind of could show you, okay. And they handed him the ball a couple times. You kind of start to see where we might have a building block both there and also in the running game to where we might can maybe get out of the gutter, if you will.
Yeah, I still got some room to grow there on my thoughts on that. I don't love the idea that your wide receiver taking a handoff, it continues to be your best running play. Getting CD involved to start the game, I thought was very smart right from the beginning, and that's not a huge surprise. You kind of expected them to do that, but it's one thing to say it, it's one thing to game plan for it, it's another to actually execute it, which they did very well. And I would say, if I had to pick one play that I thought was really key for them, it would probably be the one time that CD got single coverage, Dak found him, 55-yard touchdown. I mean, not only because it ended up with a 55-yard touchdown, and touchdowns were going to be the difference in a game where obviously the Giants had trouble scoring any. So it wasn't just that it was a touchdown play, but it was the fact of how many times is CD going to get one-on-one. And when he does, the pressure is on. You have to capitalize on that play. And they capitalized in a big way. And so, yes, the thing is with me with the offense is that there were so many moments, Saad and I were talking about this during the game, so many moments where, the press box is behind the Cowboys bench, and you would just look down, and more so than I can ever really remember any time recently, offensive linemen would be getting up, stretching. Dak would be doing like a whole stretching routine because there was such a long period of time where the offense was just on the bench. Whereas I feel like if there would have been some quick 3-and-outs early on, I think the Cowboys offense could have piled on. But there was just these lulls, late they had that long drive, late second quarter, and then even opening the third quarter, just I don't know. I think that if it's an excuse, whatever, but I think that impacted the offense a little bit. I think they could have had a better game if it wasn't for those. And that's what the Giants wanted to do. They wanted to have long drives like that. Moments where I thought that the run defense looked like it did the last 2 weeks, but then there were some other moments where I was like, okay, I see some growth here. But two particular plays, that the one where Donovan Wilson breaks through on that, I think it was 4th and 1. He's got to make that stop. He has to make that. I mean, this is the NFL. You got to make those tackles. So there were a couple of plays like that, but in the end, when they needed the biggest one, Micah came through with that run stop, behind the line of scrimmage before he got hurt. And I thought that was huge. And then just the fact that, hey, the Giants still had a chance, and Lawrence wasn't on the field and Micah was on the field, and they found a way to get off the field with some guys that maybe you probably didn't expect would be playing in that situation in a tight ball game. So, yeah, I'm not trying to be super negative about this, but I just want to be realistic.
Yeah, and I think while John mentioned the 55-yard touchdown to CD, I think the thing that impressed me the most was the drive before that when Dak completed passes to 6 different receivers: Lipke, Ferguson, Rico Dowdle for the touchdown, and of course CD, Cooks, and Tolbert. I mean, Dak was just absolutely in a groove after that first 3-and-out. Dak hit a groove, obviously over 80% completion percentage. But I think getting everybody involved on that, I think it was a 12-play, 70-yard drive or something like that ended in the touchdown was really key, was really big. but offensively, I think like John said, like we were watching and we're just like Dak is literally going through his entire pregame routine, like the whole stretch bit on the sideline because they were just there for so long. And just real quick, one more thought that I had was like going back to John's initial point about it just being the Giants, like that first pass that Malik Neighbors caught, that's a pass that Derek Carr completed to Rashid Shaheed, and it was a 70-yard touchdown. If that pass is not a floater from Daniel Jones, again, not to be all negative, but if that's not just a floater and Malik Neighbors is not backpedaling slowly towards the sideline, that had a really good chance. You hit that into the zone. He catches the ball, cuts inside on Malik Hooker, and he's gone for a whatever yard touchdown. So there's all the context of like, yeah, it was a good win, but also, there was some stuff, meat left on the bone for sure.
Real quick, Stephen Jones did an interview this afternoon, probably about 5 or 6 hours before the game, with ESPN San Antonio, and he said on that interview that if this was a normal week, Carson would have been available. It was because of the fact that they were playing only a few days apart. But I bring that up to say it was interesting to see them come out the second half and be like, okay, Booth, that's enough. And then they went with this a Warrior, who is a guy that I want to say they signed to the practice squad. I think it was August 25th or August 28th. I mean, so it was at the end of training camp, right before the season was going to start. And it was just interesting that they were a guy that was on the practice squad. He was one of their two elevations for this game, that he ended up coming up, and playing pretty solid and had the pick late. And so it was interesting to see how quick they were like, okay, Booth, we're good.
Yeah. I was kind of, first of all, like halftime adjustments, everyone talks about, like, yeah, that was a halftime adjustment right there because, but also like, I was a little surprised how New York kind of quit running the ball in the second half. I know they're behind.
Hey, you were surprised by that? I was surprised by the fact of, and maybe this is just because I don't know what I'm talking about, and that's fine. I'll take it. But like, how are you not just, okay, Trayvon Diggs is not traveling. How are you not just putting Neighbors wherever Booth is? Like, I don't care what the original call was. You go, oh no, Neighbors. Yep, go find Booth. Yes, now you stand in front of him, and that's where we run the play from. Like, I don't understand how that doesn't just, we're going to keep doing this drive after drive after drive.
And on that same token, how do you leave the one Cowboys threat that you take seriously? How do you have him that one time in single coverage? I mean, before that happened, from the view I had more of a view like y'all had for this one rather than TV.
You had a great view. That was awesome.
I was like, he's in single coverage. Like, CD's like, we were all calling it like, there, go. And they did. But it's like in contrast to, for example, the first third down of the game where CD's getting hit in the mouth, and couldn't get 5 yards upfield. And it was just, got to take advantage of those little things.
It looked like you were at the game from your view, from what you posted.
I had a good view, but it was
view.
cool. Cosm's a pretty cool spot if you guys ever get a chance to check it out. But I do want to say, like, penalties are bad, and I do wish that the NFL would talk to referee crews on Thursday, Sunday night, and Monday night games when it's the only game on and the whole world's watching. And on the TV, guys, when you rewatch this thing, Al Michaels is just grilling the referees at the end of the second quarter because he's just pissed because there's so many flags. But the Cowboys did dodge a bullet on the Rico Dowdle touchdown, and they threw the flag and picked it up. I sure thought it was holding on Jake Ferguson. And Tyler Smith was in the mix there too, but I sure thought it was. And when the refs picked it up, I was very surprised.
What about that face mask earlier? What about the face mask earlier?
Yeah.
On Overshown.
That was clearly, and they called it on the Giants. And so there were stuff. They ended up finishing. So they finished with 11. Was it? No, wait.
11 penalties, I think. Yeah, it's 11 penalties for.
No, it had to be more than 89.
I just had it.
Where is this? I just had it too. Where is it at? Penalties. 11 for 89, I think. Yeah, 11 for 89. And I thought it was going to be even worse than that because it was pretty close to that number at halftime. And make no mistake, that would have been one of the top storylines if they lose this game because it, much like with the run defense, looked like some of the Cowboys teams we've seen in the past where that has been an issue. And whether you're talking about big playoff games, Raiders Thanksgiving game, the penalties have been a thing for several years now, to the point where, it was one of the biggest talking points of some of the biggest losses over the last 3 or 4 years. And it looked like that was going to be impact on this game. So that's not as big of a storyline, but yeah, you do that against a good team and you're walking out with an L.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think on the penalties in particular, like whatever it is, and I know there's some ticky tack calls and you call holding on every play, but Tyler Guyton has been called for more holding calls than there's been games this season, and so I think that's something that he's got to figure out too, because it's negated 2 really really big plays at the end of the first half. Last week, CD drew that pass interference, but it came back because Tyler Guyton was holding. This time, I understand the player jumped off sides, so you're trying to protect your quarterback. But when the player jumps off sides, it's a free play. You can't negate that by holding as well. And so then Dak completed a pass down the field, and that play came back as well. That would have put them in field goal range. So there is some stuff that Guyton's got to clean up. He's fine. Like, I think he's having growing pains that any rookie would have. He's not terrible. It's not Chaz Green out there, but at the same time, he's got stuff to clean up for sure.
That's what I was going to ask. How concerned do you think they are about Tyler Guyton? Because it is clear on some of those things, like some little adjustments just weren't being made. Thibodeau was doing the same move the whole game, where he was kind of juking to the outside and then cutting to the inside. I mean, how concerned are y'all? And then how concerned do you think they are? I know it's early.
I don't think they're. I think I'm in the same spot that they probably are, where it's, yeah, you're a little bit concerned, but he's a young guy that you're going to take the good with the bad, and he's your left tackle of now and well into the future. So these are some things you have to deal with. Also, by the way, let's pretend he's not a rookie. Let's pretend he's in his 5th year, and let's pretend he's on a 1-year deal. Who on the team are you putting in over him? Thank you. I'm done. There's not another offensive tackle. You're just like, well, it's time that we. No, you're not activating. Well, let's go and putting him in over. Like Guyton, yes, of course, yes. These holdings, you got to get rid of. You got to clean it up. You can't. Whatever. He is still your best option at left tackle. If this is a team that had re-signed Tyron Smith, and then they drafted Guyton because they're like, he's the heir apparent, obviously Tyron Smith would be your starting left tackle if he was healthy. And you'd have some options there at least. I don't look at this as like. I honestly, what I'm saying, I feel the same way about Terrence Steele when he's not looked great. Like, I don't see them looking bad enough to where you're like, all right, it's like a Booth Awarie thing where you're like, well, all right, it's time to go to the second guy now. Like, I don't see it being on that level. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm not watching it right. But I just don't see. I think Guyton would have to be really bad for them to pull him, and I don't think he's even close to being at that level yet.
Saad, do you know how? Any update on Tank? Yeah. He talked a couple of times. The first time he just said I'm straight, but then he expanded later, and he seems to be fine too. I think he's. I don't know what his status would have been if he could have gone back in the game or not. I think John asked that question to him, but he was. But I do think he'll definitely play in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, he sounded even more optimistic than Micah. They taped the bottom of his foot, he said, because it has to do with like the arch in his foot. So they taped it so that it would take pressure off of the arch. The reason that it's of concern is he's had foot issues. And so that's where anytime there's something like that, you're like, oh, is this something that has to do with something he's had before? And so there's no way of knowing that right away. I don't think it's significant. Well, he got his helmet back and he could have went in. So
he did say that it was unrelated to anything previously that he's had on the foot. So that's positive.
I just always wonder with any injury where you heal from it and then the way it heals, does it overcompensate another part of your foot or knee or elbow or shoulder, whatever the injury is, to where it's like, all right, well now, that part's all fixed and everything, but now it makes this part could be susceptible to another injury or something. But just from the way he was talking after the game, like he said he was in some pain, but nothing that he said he'd be good. And it sounded like he expects to play next week. But again, like if it was something where they thought it was bad enough, they wouldn't even waste their time retaping it and they wouldn't even give him his helmet back, and they did both. And so that made me think that was a good sign right there. And then just him talking in the locker room, it seemed like he was really good vibes, good, positive about, what it was. But it is pretty wild to think that there was a point where I thought they might have lost their two best defensive linemen for an extended period of time. And man, how crazy it would be, for as bad as it's been the previous 2 weeks, if you were to lose those two guys for several weeks, months. I mean, yeah, I don't know how the defense gets fixed without them.
No, absolutely. And Jerry talked, right? No Jerry? No Jerry.
No.
Okay. Short week.
Not so much after road games. He doesn't really.
Yeah, okay.
He hasn't talked much after road games the last couple of years. So.
All right. Well, all right, here we go. So look, a lot to clean up, but September football's over and you escape 2-2. It was a little scary. Let's get healthy, get some ice. You guys go ahead and make sure you get plenty of fluids, IVs. We don't have any cramps. The flight home, we'll get ready for the Steelers.
Was there a point during the game where you thought they might lose?
There were multiple points where I thought they might lose. There are also multiple points where I thought they were going to win, though, too. I think Assad had a really good tweet that was like, this is where your $100 million quarterback wide receiver combination go put the dagger in a lesser team. And didn't happen. But, this is all about building blocks here. Running game a little bit better. Run defense better. It's I don't know. It's tough to. I don't know. A lot of Cowboys fans I was watching the game with too were like, God, they were not. It's not pretty.
I will also say,
I hear you.
I'm hating on the Giants and all that. I will say this is a better Giants team than they've played in previous seasons too, though.
Yeah, and to be honest, I don't think I really felt that they would lose, but that's also because tonight I felt like a 4-point game was a 2-possession game. So for me, like that was the biggest thing is like the Giants. I love the way you say the head coach's name, KT, but I don't know what he was thinking with some of those field goal attempts. Like, I mean, you're at the 3-yard line, you can't drive, and you're gonna kick a field goal from. I mean. On that field goal attempt, I heard boos from the stadium.
Yeah.
Like they were not happy with that field goal attempt. So when all you're doing is kicking field goals and a 4-point game is a 2-possession, that's why like if Dak and the offense had gone down and scored a touchdown there and made it a 9-point game, that's a 3-possession game. So I mean, it's over at that point.
Even Daniel Jones, who makes Eli Manning seem like or Dennis Rodman to me, like. Even Daniel Jones looked frustrated on that they didn't go for it on the 4th down in the red zone there in the second half. And I was like, wow, he's pretty animated. That I usually don't see that from Daniel Jones. So that was stunning to me. That was
wild. And then you have to go for it on 4th and 6. And I actually agree with him going for it there. I mean, he could have punted, but I do agree with him going for it on 4th and 6 at the end. But that's 4th and goal at the 3. Like, dude, there's no evidence that the Cowboys are going to go 97 yards and like you're going to wear that. Oh, one more thing. I don't want to forget this because I do want to let you guys go.
Yeah.
Malik Hooker, what are you doing? Dude, I mean, if Wan'Dale Robinson was a normal-sized wide receiver, game. What are you doing? It's just little things.
Yeah.
I thought you were also talking about the fact that he got fetched on the play that didn't really end up being a fumble, but he got fetched by the tight end. Yeah, you can't do that either.
That was why they do they time your 40 speed and they don't let's look at your 60s and 80s too because he got. Oh man.
Do you think at all that Dable, because they got beaten a game where only field goals were needed, that he thought he was about to do the same to another team? Isn't that when against Washington? Didn't Washington beat them with just field goals?
Yeah.
Am I wrong on that?
7 field goals where they didn't punt, and the Giants would have won if he would have activated another kicker because Graham Gano was hurt, and he got drugged through the mud in the New York media because they didn't have a kicker, and it cost him some points.
If I told you before the game that was Dable's plan, and then you watched the game you just did, you'd believe that.
When I see Daboll and I see his face, I do see he looks like a mischievous guy.
He looks like a man that has lost a lot of weight from. I believe it was Ozempic. Is that right? He talked about it in the offseason, like in July. He lost I want to say at least 50 pounds. He's lost Ozempic? A lot of weight. I saw him talking. I saw him talking on the field probably 2 or 3 hours before the game doing a pregame interview with Kaylee Hartung, and I got my binoculars out because I couldn't believe it was him. Like, it's very noticeable. He's lost a lot of weight.
He's taking those semi-Fajoko glutide shots. That's an Andrew Booth reference from the preseason. Let's go ahead. You don't remember much in the preseason. It's how it goes. Guys, thank you for your time staying up late with us out in New York. Jesus, it's 1:06 a.m. there. We will catch up soon. We have 10 days, so we'll get our schedule all ironed out. Thank you to all the listeners. And John, we escaped without having to give someone a lot of money too. But thanks to everyone who was hanging out in the Discord. Make sure you're checking out the Discord and get in that. We had a big in-game chat. If you want to catch up on some things, this is pretty funny. It was a good night there on the Discord as well. Check out Saad and John's work over on The Athletic. For John Machota, for Saad Youssef live in New York at MetLife Stadium, they did not tear their Achilles or ACL there on the field. They're good. For our producer, Kent Garrison, I'm Kevin, and we will see you next time on the One Star Cowboys podcast. We're 2-2.